Understanding Modular Assessments, grades 6 through 8. We appreciate you being here. We'll just get on started. First and foremost, thank you so much to the New Hampshire Department of Education. Without them, we would not be able to put on these webinars free of cost. They are sponsoring everything that we're doing for these modular assessments, so we appreciate it. In addition, we cannot hear you. You are muted, so talk away, but make sure that you're asking questions here in the Q&A portion of your screen so that we can get any questions you might have answered. If you enter it in the chat, everybody will see it. I have Annie Wallace here from the New Hampshire Department of Education. She is going to be checking out more the Q&A than the chat section, but you can put them in either one. Tomorrow, there will be an email. It will have a link to your PD certificate. It will have a link to any of the handouts and the PowerPoint and everything from today. We have a little bit of a backlog on the recording. We're still working on the recording from last week, but we will get a recording up of this for you to have and to pass on to anybody that might need it as soon as we can. And then at the end of this, just know that when you come off of Zoom, there'll be a brief survey. We truly appreciate any of the feedback that we are getting for these webinars. We want to make sure that we're doing things that are really valuable and informational. So if you have any thoughts or about what was a really great thing that you might use or something that you thought you would want to know as well, please let us know. I'm Heather Jenkins, and so this is me. We also, like I said, have Annie Wallace from the New Hampshire Department of Education.
Thank you, everybody, for coming. We really do appreciate your presence here and your willingness to learn more.
Right. Okay, so starting off with a general reminder. So whenever we talk about assessment and we look at data, what I really want everybody to think about is the fact that we're looking at all times to improve student performance. We're not just trying to get more data for the sake of having more data. We really want to use it to improve student performance. Modular assessment data, I find a really good way to figure out where your students are with the particular standards from your grade level, and they're all directly related to the Common Core, so it helps us understand where students are in relation to the skills that they need at your grade level. Our goals for today is, I want to talk a little bit about why you might use the New Hampshire SAS modular assessments. I want to show you what options you have available to you for math grades 6 through 8. And I also want to show you how they might be able to help you dig a little bit deeper into the standards at your grade level and understand the standards with maybe a little bit different lens that you might have in the past. And then I also want to show you how to get to them. So we'll get started. First things first, I want to talk about the benefits and uses of the assessments. So just some general information about them. They are short periodic assessments. For math, they're anywhere between maybe 8 and maybe up to 14, mostly 12 questions, and you can use them periodically. They're not as big as the New Hampshire SAS summative. The great thing about these modular assessments is that all students get the same questions. So it allows you to see where some maybe misunderstandings might be, or maybe some additional need might be for your instruction. For any of these particular modulars, math is directly related to the Common Core. So is ELA for that matter. And then the science is based on NGSS. The modular assessments are based on the standard domains of math, so you can match them up to your current units. I'll show you in just a little bit. There are times where a particular assessment might be a little bit more than one domain of math together. So we'll talk about where that shows up, but for the most part, you can match them right up with your standard domains. And you can administer them pretty much any time throughout the year. The window is, it's open, but not everybody has their students uploaded to Tide. There are, if you're waiting for the beginning of the year information to go in, if your administrators haven't sent that yet to be uploaded, I believe that everybody will be in by, I want to say that it's the first week in October. Annie, is that correct? Am I making that up?
No, that's when it should all be up.
Okay, thank you. And then the last thing is they can be administered at your current grade level or whatever the appropriate grade level is for students. So if you have 7th grade students that you really need to, or 6th grade students really that need to maybe access a little bit more of the 5th grade standards, you can do that. It becomes a little bit tricky for math because you have to really think about what skills are feeding into your current grade level skills and make sure that if you're administering modulars that they do match up with that. How they help you as teachers, obviously they're going to be able to help measure student achievement. The students are getting into the system, it is scored, you will be able to see what their scores are almost immediately. And again, automatically scored. That question level data is really helpful because it's anytime we're doing assessments, the New Hampshire SAS summatives, while they are a good indicator of where students are in relation to the Common Core standards, you can't look at it down to the question level for students. So you're not totally aware of where the misunderstanding is or what the type of question it was necessarily. With the modulars, you can see that, so it's really helpful. They can help you evaluate any sort of programming or any sort of curriculum that you are using and your teaching impact, right? So it's not necessarily evaluating just your program, but it's evaluating how you are instructing in relation to that program. And they can help you understand each child's progress, gaps, and needs. And as you're looking at this data, depending on how you're looking at it, if you're looking at it as a formative assessment, you can start to determine what you might need to gather for resources like physical resources. How do I need to continue to teach this? Or people resources. If you have folks in your classroom that are able to give extra support to some students, the modular assessments can help you pinpoint some of the skills that they might be able to work on with those students. Obviously, they're going to provide some detailed information for instructional purposes as you start to look at where students are doing really well or where they might not be doing as well. It can help you figure out what you're going to focus on for the next few weeks and what you might need to reteach in a different way or what you might be able to let go. This last one is really important. It is I feel like as much as we want to use these modular assessments to understand where students are, whenever I work with folks in the modular assessments and we start to look at the questions in relations to the standards, there just becomes an overall deeper awareness of what the standards are for your grade level. I know we all know the standards, we all look at our standards, we want to be aware of what we're teaching, but these modular assessments and these questions and looking at them and understanding, okay, do I actually teach it down to this particular depth of knowledge that I'm seeing in this question? Or maybe I teach it in this way, but I'm just missing one part of it. And if I added this one little thing onto it and showed it to students in this way, it would take down that barrier that students are having for understanding a particular question or how to answer it. For students, the benefits are I would say invaluable. It's giving the students an understanding of what the assessments are about, and that's New Hampshire SAS in general. What typically happens is students take the New Hampshire SAS summative assessment at the end of every year. It is not one person that I've ever known's favorite time of year, right? We all know that it's a really challenging time for us as teachers, and it's a challenging time for our students to try and get through that testing and really make sure that students are doing what they can to show what they know. But what happens is we do that, the students take it, and for the most part, we never talk about it. We never talk about how they did. We never talk about some of the challenges that they had. Maybe we do that a little bit before then because we're doing, some practice tests, or, we're trying to get some additional sort of test prep in. These modulars are, while they're going to, the most valuable part about them is they're helping you understand where students are academically. They are also showing them what the portal looks like and having them work through problems. And you're able to then talk with students about the results and ask students, where was the problem that you have here? How was this particular question hard? Or put one up on the board and say, hey, this is what we have today. What do you think are some strategies we could use to be able to solve this problem? So it's really giving them an understanding of what the assessments are about. It allows them to practice right in that portal and allows them to do their work in that portal so that it's not just that one time of year where they're really trying their best, but they're not really sure and not used to the system. And it takes away a lot of those barriers of testing. Specifically with math, there's a lot of things that students need to do on the screen to show their understanding. Sometimes it's a graph, maybe it's a number line, maybe it's putting an equation into a keypad. And while they might understand the answer and how to answer it if it were pen and paper, it's giving them that opportunity to learn and to use some of those tools in the system so that when they do get to the summatives, they're able to also continue to show their knowledge. This next graphic is just an example of some, in the past, as we've worked on modulars over the years with teachers, what the proficiency level ended up happening with teachers that were using modular assessments. Again, not teaching to the test, but just showing the students and working through problems and really digging into those standards and making sure that they're covering what they need to cover, and proficiency goes up. Different uses for the modular assessments. They can be used an end of unit assessment. They can be used as a pre-assessment. They can be set up as a formative assessment, and they can also be set up just as a practice. Let's take a look at this. Let's try this. And then the individual questions can also be used if you open up the assessment viewing application and you put them up on your board for students to be able to see, then you can talk about them. They could be a question of the day for you. If you do math workshop, they're amazing questions to do for math workshop and getting students talking about strategies to be able to solve problems and just what their math thinking is. So using those individual questions as your sample or example question for the day is also valuable. Any questions, Annie, that we have so far?
I'm not seeing anything as of yet.
Okay, sounds good. All right, so let's look at some of the options that you have for each grade level. So for grade 6, basically the way I'm going to go through these next few slides is going to be, I'm going to start with grade 6, then go on to grade 7, and then grade 8. I know some of you are probably across grade levels, so you'll be able to see for any of the particular grade levels that you teach. So for 6th grade in math, we have expressions and equations, and then there's geometry, statistics, and probability. So those are combined, and then the number system and ratios and proportions. Here are the examples of the modular assessments that you could administer. So you can see here for expressions and equations, you have 3 different options for expressions and equations. Statistics and probability, you have a couple. Number system, you have a couple. Ratios and proportions, you have 3. We have some supplemental documents for this as well. And what we've done, a lot of people were really curious about how the modulars were set up and what types of questions there were. So we created a spreadsheet here that says for ratios and proportions, this is modular A, there are 11 multiple choice and 1 open. Modular B has 12 multiple choice, no open, same with modular C. So you can start to see what the ratio of multiple choice and open questions that might be like a drag or fill in the graph or put in an equation. So sometimes when you're choosing which modular, this might help you figure out which modular you might want to choose. You can also look at them through the assessment viewing application, but this is just another way to see what the breakdown is for questions. Also, for each modular, what we have done is we have mapped it out with the specific standards and how many questions are related to that particular standard. Again, people were wondering, okay, as I'm going through this particular modular, which standards am I hitting? And if I really am looking at trying to do ratios and proportions, that 3C, there's 5 questions on A on that. So you might choose that one instead. So you can kind of see what the question breakdown is for each particular standard. This page right here is, you can see that it says major, supporting, and additional. This is in relation to the Achieve the Core algebra progression. So Achieve the Core has gone through the Common Core standards, and then for each grade level has deemed what they feel the major standards are, the supporting standards, and the additional standards. So again, that's an algebra progression, but you can see here where the standards are and what sort of the have-tos are for your particular grade level matched up with each of the modulars. I'm going to talk a little bit about this page here. This is Annie Wallace from the New Hampshire Department of Education has created these amazing supplemental documents for the modular assessments. They're backed to draft form because the Cambium folks are tweaking some of the questions and have changed a couple of the questions here and there, not many, but so Annie's going in and remapping it. So here's what you'll have is for every single modular, she tells you which modular she's talking about, which question it is, she maps it to a standard, she tells you what the focus area is, because for some folks, if you're using formulas, you don't necessarily know it's mapped exactly to this standard. She tells you what the students' challenges or misunderstandings are, and then some notes about what they're doing for that question in the system. It's amazing. So if you were looking at a particular modular and you wanted to see which one you want to use, this document, she's gone through every single question and mapped it. This right here is huge. This common misunderstanding or areas of challenge are super helpful for you to understand what sort of obstacles or what sort of maybe even misunderstandings we have as teachers that maybe we need to make sure that that students are really crystal clear about some of these things that we are teaching them. So I can't say enough about that particular document. For 7th grade, the same type of thing. You have expressions and equations, geometry, the number system, ratios and proportions, and statistics and probability. These are the particular modular assessments for math that you have. So a couple of expressions and equations, you've got 3 geometry, you've got 3 number system, ratios and proportions, you've got 3, and then statistics and probability, you've got 2. Again, this is the same question breakdown. Oh, this says 4th grade. This is 7th grade. So this is your 7th grade breakdown of multiple choice compared to open questions. And then this is the Achieve the Core and the specific standards that we have for the Common Core, all mapped out for the number of questions for each particular modular assessment and how it's mapped to the standards. This is that document as well. This is just a quick snapshot of that. Again, tells you which modular that we're looking at, which question, standard, focus area, misunderstanding or area of challenge, and some notes about what they're doing in the system. This is all available to you with the resources that you'll be getting tomorrow as well. So 8th grade, here you go. Expressions and equations, functions, geometry in the number system, and statistics and probability. So you got a couple expressions and equations, a couple of functions, geometry in the number system. You have 4 of them, and then you have a couple of the statistics and probability. Here is the question breakdown for that. And then here is the mapping to the Common Core and to the Achieve the Core, major, supporting, and additional. And then this is that question breakdown as well. So each grade level has the same documentation. In addition, what we've put in your materials is the middle school skills, standards, and competencies. These were created, Annie worked on these as well for the New Hampshire Department of Education. And what she has done is she's created competencies and then she's matched them up with the standards. These are really a great guide if you are starting to move towards competencies, which most folks are, in what we're trying to get students to be able to do, and then what skills are associated with that. This is just a snapshot. It's got each one of the grade levels there. And then this is another one. I really like this particular, it's a progression that we're looking at. So you can see where operations and algebraic thinking started in kindergarten and went up through 5th grade. It moves on to expressions, equations, and inequalities. And then at high school, it's the algebra, seeing structure and expressions. So you can see sort of where students are coming from and which standards and the grade levels feed into the standards at your particular grade level. Again, this will be in your materials for tomorrow. Any questions?
The only questions so far really are around where to get the materials. So they'll be in the folders that you'll get the link to tomorrow.
Yes. All right. So talking about grade level examples. So what we're going to start doing right now is I'm going to go through each grade level, and we'll start with 6th grade again. And Annie and I, a couple of years ago, started looking at these modular assessments in which particular standards do we feel at each grade level within a domain of math are some of the biggest misunderstandings for teachers and for students. So what we have here is for 6th grade, so for expressions and equations, the standard that we think are some of the biggest misconceptions is the standard EE9, and the standards listed here. We've put the misconception in here, and then this is a snapshot of a question from the modular assessments. I can tell you this is not the exact question. They are copywritten, so we had to change some things just for test security, but this is a very similar type of question than what you would see on a modular assessment. So I'm not going to take too much time on this, but I do want to show you that we have this. The materials that you get tomorrow will have it all in one place. I put them in the slides here so that you can see them in the slides as well. But the modular assessment example document for grades 6 through 8 has this all in it as well. So again, this is geometry. You can just start seeing what some of these modular questions are looking like. This is the standard misconception. This is for statistics and probability. And then what the misconception is. This is something that's, you know, like what we're talking about. How do they navigate this particular question? Here's one of the number system standards and what you would see. And then this is ratios and proportions and an example of what a question might look like and what the misconception is. For 7th grade, we've gone through these as well. So you're getting the same information here. So for expressions and equations, we put a couple of questions in here that are related to this particular standard. Here's a geometry question. Here's the number system. Show some proportions. Interestingly enough, on these particular questions, kids think this automatically is a calculator and it's a touchpad, so a keypad. Statistics and probability. And as for the 8th grade examples, here's your expressions and equations. Again, keypad. There's your functions. Geometry. Number system. Statistics and probability. All right, I know I went through that quickly, but I didn't necessarily want to take too much time talking about the exact questions, but you can definitely go through that and really dig into your particular grade level once you get the materials tomorrow.
Right, and there are no questions at this time, but I also, Heather, wanted to remind people they can email either one of us if questions come up later on too.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thanks, Annie. Okay, let's talk about where you're actually going to see these modular questions and these modulars and be able to choose from them. So the first place you're going to go is to the portal. So if you've ever administered a New Hampshire SAS summative, it's the same portal that you've been on in the past. When you're on the home page here, you're going to go under test administration. So from the home page, you can do that, or on the home page, there's these pictures here. You can also go to test administration here, and it will bring you right to a page that looks like this. There's a section here that says preparing for test. And what we're talking about here is the assessment viewing application. So this is where you would click. Just a heads up, if you have not gone on the system since you administered the summatives last year, this test administration certification needs to be done before you're able to view any of the modular assessments. So every school year, you have to do the test administration certification. That's about a 25-minute certification where they're giving you the information and you answer the questions. As soon as you're done with that, you can start logging into the assessment viewing application and some of these areas that I'm going to show you. So you click on the assessment viewing application and it will prompt you to log in. Again, you need to do the yearly test certification course. If it's your first time logging in this year, you're going to need to request a new one for the school year. It's the same process that you've gone in the past. And then once you're actually logged in, there'll be a drop-down menu where you're able to click and then you'll be able to choose a grade level. As soon as you choose a grade level here, I've chosen 7th grade, all your modular assessments will show up and you're able to click on whatever modular assessment you want to open, and it will open up into a screen where you're able to scroll through any of the questions that are on that particular assessment. The one thing I will tell you, the assessment viewing application, you can see all of the questions and you're able to view what the students are getting, but a heads up that it does not show you the exact standards that are associated with it, nor does it show you the answer. It's only after the students have answered the questions and you go into the reporting portal that you would be able to see what the correct answer or answers are for a question. At this point, we don't have any sort of answer keys or things like that. Any questions on that, Annie? I saw a couple of people, maybe you're answering them behind the scenes, but I just want to make sure.
I am trying to answer them, and somebody asked the link for the portal, but I'm not able to put that up in the chat so that everybody can see. So I will put it through the question and answer thing so everybody should see it, should be able to see it.
Okay, is the chat
That
just
way.
not working for you?
I just have hosts and panelists.
Oh,
So
do you want me to put it in there, or are you all set with the Q&A?
no, if you can put it in there too, and then I'll put it that way, we make sure people have it.
Okay, I'm just gonna escape out of here because I'm gonna go here and I'll just grab it.
Okay.
From here. I'll get this. Use the drop down to everybody. So there's the link for everybody. Yeah. There we go. All right. So hopefully that's helpful. The next thing I want to talk about is once you've figured out which modular assessment you would like to administer to your students, now let's talk about how we do that. So again, you're going to go right to that same link. I sent you right to that teacher page, so it's already on the test administration there, so you don't actually have to click on test administration from the link that I gave you. But you're going to scroll down on that test administration page, and you are going to be able to click on this administering tests. Once you do that, it will ask you to log in. Again, if you have not done the test administration certification, you have to do that before you can actually log in to administer an assessment. If you've done that, this is what you'll see. So you're able to set up any of these types of sessions to administer the modulars. So what I want to do is I want to walk you through the different ways that you would administer a modular assessment. So I am going to go live right into that portal here. So as I'm on test administration here, I'm going to scroll down. Here's the assessment viewing application. Here's that, that test administration certification that you need to be doing. But here's the administering tests. So I'll click right on this. I've already logged in. So it would ask me to log in, but I logged in right before this this training started. So it remembers that I was logged in. So here's my choices. I have an active session. I have an upcoming session, and I have an at-home assignment. Active sessions are probably what most of you already know about with administering the summatives. So if you've ever done that, this is most likely the way you've done it, where you start a new session. You won't have to do this, but I have to do this. It will bring you right to this screen, right? And we're going to choose math. And then you have the choice between interim modular or Braille modular. Later in the year, you will see summative show up as well. But for us, we want to choose the modulars. Rule of thumb, if there is a plus symbol, use the plus symbol, because if I just say I want 7th grade and I click on this, it gives me every single modular for 7th grade. So when the students log into this active session, they could go into any one of those. So we typically just want one, so I can just clear that. I'll use the plus. Maybe I want to use the expressions and equations B. And then I've got it right over here. This tells me which particular modular I am going to administer. And then down on the bottom here, it's going to ask me to choose a test reason. This is where I want you to just, if you have other people in your grade level and you want to look at this data all together. So let's say you have 2 or 3 math teachers that are administering this particular modular assessment for 7th grade. Every single one of you needs to choose the same test reason if you want to see the data all together in one particular area. It'll all be in the reporting portal, but what will happen is if I choose unassigned, somebody else chooses fall, and another person chooses test 1, there will be 3 separate lines for this expressions and equations B, and I would have to download every single one of them and copy and paste all of the students in that. So you want to choose all the same test reason. You can go in after, if say I goofed, say I was supposed to put in unassigned, but I chose fall and the other 2 teachers chose unassigned. I can go in and change that test reason, but it is just a little bit harder. So it really doesn't matter what your test reason is, except that maybe it just needs to make sense to folks. A lot of sites that I work with, they keep it as unassigned, or if they're thinking, I'm going to give this particular modular as a pre-assessment, a formative, and a post, then you want to choose separate test reasons for each one of those so that then you can look at the data that was the pre-assessment, the one that was the formative, and one that was the post. So just rule of thumb, if you have more than one teacher, choose the same test reason. As soon as I choose the test reason, I click Start Live Session, and this should look pretty familiar to you if you've ever administered these summatives or a modular or whatever. This is your test session ID, so students will need this, and they will also need their sort of test ticket items, so their SSID and their spelling of their first name, to be able to log in, and then you give them this session ID. So those are the 3 pieces of information they need. And then as soon as students start coming in, this little grayed out right now because I don't have any students coming in, this is where you start to approve students. This session is active for as long as you keep it open. Unless students are paused for more than 20 minutes, then it closes the session. So this is exactly what you're probably used to. When you're done with the session, you hit stop. It says, are you sure? And you say yes, and then you're done. So this particular session ID is done. You can't use it again. It won't come up again. Students couldn't log into it now. They would, as soon as I stopped it, all students would be, the session would stop for them. Things to know about stopping a session. If students are still working, and you have to stop the session, maybe it's going a little longer than you thought, or you've run out of time, and you want students to be able to do the particular modular assessment the next day, what happens is that you start a live session again the next day. And what will happen for those students? Let's say there were 12 questions and I got through 8 of them. And I had clicked on question 9, but I didn't finish question 9. I will then start my next session on question 10, because it will go from basically where I ended, and it will not let me change the answers up to that. So we'll just start you on the next question. So there's that. The easiest way to get back to that page, it's a little tricky to try to go backwards here. So what I end up doing here is I end up closing this particular interface and say leave, and then I click on this again and it opens the screen up. I have to click on a whole bunch of things to go backwards. I think it's a security thing. So that's how you would administer the modulars with an active session. The next way you could administer it is with an upcoming session. So if I click on upcoming, what I'm able to do is I'm able to schedule a session that's up to 2 weeks long. So I've got my calendar here, And I could say, I want to start this session. Let's say I wanted to start it tomorrow and I wanted this session. I might be working on it with kids for a couple of days. So maybe I'll say to the 4th. And then I'll click next. And then I start choosing the same information. I'm going to choose the modular. Maybe this time I'm 6th grade. And I'm going to go with expressions and equations. The difference is with this is on the right hand side, I can see my modular, but I have to give it a test. I have to give it a session name, because that way, if I have more than one session open at a time, I know which one's which. So I'm just going to say this is grade 6, expressions and equations A. I want to choose my test reason. I'm going to keep it unassigned. And then I save my session. This is going to be the session ID. And I'll see that also when I'm looking here. So what's happened here is that I have the upcoming session and I'm not able to do anything with it yet. The only time I'll be able to do something with this session that I've created is when this date comes up and it's a current date, right? I'm within the window. This session will go and move to my active sessions. So I'm going to show you how that will look. So now if I change it actually to this date and I say next, and I've got all of this and I save my session, it's not my upcoming anymore. It's actually moved to my active sessions and you can see the date range. Now, the biggest problem that teachers have that I run into with people who create these upcoming sessions and they have this range is you've got the session ID and now the kids are trying to log in and they're saying there's no tests available. I don't understand. Why are there no tests available? And you look here and you say, well, it is. Look at this. I see it right here. You have to join it. If you don't join it, then you're not going to be able to approve students to come in. And so you join it and now you're back at this page. This is again the code. You're able to use the same code for a number of days. So that's why people like to use this, is it's the same code. And so the kids just know that code and you have it somewhere, you know, listed or what have you, and then you can approve students. So it's very similar. It's just the same code for a certain number of days. Again, biggest problem that people run into is they forget to join the session. The last way that you can administer a modular assessment is through what's called an at-home assignment. Now, it's listed as an at-home assignment, but that doesn't mean that it can't be just kids sitting in front of you in the classroom doing this particular modular. So if you set this up, the reason that people like at-home assignments is, again, I'll go through, I can create an assignment. I can use a date range. So let's say I want to work on, want students to be able to work on a modular for a certain number of days. So I could choose my date range. Maybe it's 3 days. It's up to 2 weeks. And then I, again, am choosing my modular. Choose 8th grade. I'm going to go with functions A. Again, I have to give my session name. So grade 8 functions A. Okay. I give it whatever test reason I would like. Just so you know, when you're naming, you can't use like an underscore or any sort of symbol. You just have to use spaces. And then you can save the assignment. Here's the cool thing about this is I can take this and I can copy this and I can put this on the Google Classroom or what have you so that students have this. Once they have this link, it will automatically populate this for them and they can open up the assessment. You don't have to approve students. There's none of that going on with this. You just share the link and students are able to take this assessment. You can also use it as a homework assignment. You can have kids doing it at home. Obviously, you don't have as much control over it if they're not sitting in front of you, but a lot of people use it as just a little quick understanding of where students are. And, you know, obviously if it's a homework assignment, there's a little bit less of a, control that you have over, or where the students are getting their information or their answers, but it can be used that way for sure. If they are sitting right in front of you, you can give them a link, they can do that. If you don't like the fact that they could go home and then work on it at home or mess around with it at home, you can delete that session and start another one, and it will bring them right back to where they were before. But this is just an easier way. A lot of people like this because they don't have to go through the approval process. The students don't have to type in a test session ID, it automatically populates for them. And then as soon as this window is done, this will just disappear off of my at-home assignments. And that's test administration. Any questions, Annie, on test administration?
Nothing at this point.
Okay, great. All right, so let's talk about the reporting. Now we've administered, now we want to know how the students did. So once your students finish the modular assessment and they submit it, the results are available pretty much immediately. Again, the reports have detail down to the question and standard level, and you can use that data to assess understanding, create groups, dig deeper into students' mastery of standards, figure out what you're reteaching, whatever it is, and however you want to use that particular data. So to get into the reporting portal, same exact link that I gave you. As you're on that test administration, you're now down at the bottom underneath that administering tests, and you're choosing reporting. Now, what I have here for a screenshot is not what you see currently on the portal. Right now it says coming soon. They're doing a lot of uploading of students and doing some just general maintenance. So that is not available at this time. But when it is, you'll be able to go in and look at the modular assessment data. As you go into the dashboard, this is what you will see. You will see that you're able to choose the benchmarks here, right? You could choose the summatives if you were looking at those, but you choose the benchmarks here and whichever benchmarks you want to see. Then you can say, make these my default, and then go to dashboard. So now I'm seeing my benchmark math and my benchmark ELA. Keep in mind, you will only see student information if you are rostered with those students. The students have to be rostered to you. So you can administer an assessment to students all day long. But if you don't have rosters set up in your building, you will not be able to see any data, because depending on, I guess I should say, dependent on what your security level is and your level of access. So most teachers are a TE in TIDE. That's the teacher designation. And so anybody who is a TE in TIDE or a teacher, you have to have students attached to you to be able to see the data. If you are a proctor or a TA, you will never be able to see data at all. So we have a lot of folks that might be support staff or other folks, they won't be able to see data within the reporting portal at all. You have to have at least a teacher access. Above that, we have a school test coordinator. They don't need kids rostered to them. They can see all of the results without rosters. And then same thing with the district test coordinator. Those folks can see anybody at a district level. They can see all the students that don't need rosters. But typically the folks that I have in these webinars are teachers. And so if you've ever had trouble viewing the results, it's because you're not rostered. So let's pretend.
Heather, one question. Do you know if these results are also uploaded to Performance Plus?
If you have no, they're not. Sorry. Even if you have Performance Plus, we don't put the modular assessments up there. Years ago, we went back and forth. Some people were thinking, oh, we really want the modular assessments. Across the board, people did not necessarily want them because they weren't always using them as a summative type of assessment. Some of them were using them as a homework or as a formative or working together in their classes with these students. And so we got a lot of feedback that they did not necessarily want them in Performance Plus. So for these purposes, the only place that you will see them is on that Cambium reporting portal or the New Hampshire SAS portal.
Thank you, Heather.
Absolutely. So we'll go in, let's take a look. If we are looking at our benchmarks, we go into math and we choose a specific benchmark that we want to see, or specific, they're called benchmarks, but a specific modular. So now I've opened up one of the math modulars, cut off all the student names and everything because this is real data. So what you'll see here is you will see, first of all, on the left here, you see the total and how a student did overall within this particular reporting category. And then the great thing about this is you'll be able to see the 5 items in which the students perform the best and the 5 items the students perform the worst on. And then you'll be able to see the total items that were on this particular assessment. The only time you don't see these 2 areas here is when there's less than 10 questions over here. So because there's less than 10, it can't give you the 5 that they did the best and 5 they did the worst on. So as you're looking at the questions, anything here that you see with an underline that's hyperlinked, you can click on that number. You can view the question. You can view the corresponding domain, cluster, and standard that's attached to it. And you can also see the correct answer. If you were clicking on any of the numbers down here for specific students, it will show you what that student answered, and then you could click on the tab that shows you what the answer is as well. So there's a lot of things that you can view within the reports on the portal here. Again, this is how the individual student scored. And then you can download this. This particular download is the student information, and I said with summary. If not, you would only get the information over here. I cut the student names off, but you wouldn't get this is the summary information. So you want to make sure to include that. So this is how you could download it to Excel. I always download to Excel, and I start to do some, additional formulas to be able to figure out how students are doing on a particular standard. And I usually take these 5 items best and worst, and I just work with the total items, but it's really your own preference. A lot of people just work right in that reporting portal. Any questions about the reporting?
I have no questions at this time.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Last but not least, there's a lot of other New Hampshire SAS resources that are available on that portal. So wanted to highlight just a few of them here. As we're on this, again, that portal area, we're actually going to choose not test administration, but resources. Or down on the bottom of your screen, wherever you are, you can always choose resources, and it will pop up with this particular page. Here, you're able to enter in specific search criteria. You can start with some words here, or you can choose what resource type, and you can start filtering this way. You can always use the drop-down menu here as well. So for these purposes, here's some of the ones that we find super helpful for teachers. This first one here, if you type in PLDs, these are performance level descriptors. So these documents are amazing. They basically go through each particular standard and what students need to be doing to be a level 1, a level 2, a level 3, or a level 4. So here's an example for, this is 3rd grade, but this would happen for 6th, 7th, and 8th. So we've got all of your standards written on the left, and this is what students are doing with that standard that are below, that are approaching, and that are proficient or highly proficient. When it comes to understanding the standards, this is an absolute invaluable resource for you. And this is one of the resources that will be available tomorrow, or you could go right into resources right now and you could say PLDs, you could say 6th grade math, and you could download it onto your computer. So these are ELA as well. There's also, Annie last year created a math vocabulary list, and she has pulled out for each grade level what the math vocabulary is at that grade level and what students will run into on the assessments. There's also ELA vocabulary. Sometimes it's really good for you to understand cross-curricular information, and some of this might also be on the assessments for you as well. These are writing rubrics. I know for math, they're not quite as important, but they're really good tools to be able to have, as well as if you go into the students and families for the item type tutorials, this is where students are able to look at these tutorials, and they can have a little quick video on equation responses or evidence-based selected response or grid items. These tutorials are really helpful in helping students understand how to navigate some of those types of problems. Last but not least, we have that student practice site. This is what a lot of people end up using right before the summatives, is they have students practice on this site. And so they're able to go through a general math assessment or an ELA. They are not necessarily broken down as much into the different domains, but they are getting some students some of that practice. So you might have kids look at the practice site there. Any questions on resources or anything before we wrap up?
I have nothing at this point.
All right. Okay, so wrapping up here. So we have some other upcoming webinars. We've already done the grades 3 through 5, ELA, math, and science. So the next one we have coming up is understanding your modular assessments for grades 6 through 8 ELA. And then we have 6 through 8 science. New modulars that we have available are the 9 through 12. They used to have just science, but there's some ELA and some algebra and geometry modulars now for them. And the same thing with modulars for grades K through 2. Those are brand new. So we'll be having a webinar on that.
And they can now be found on the AVA.
Oh, they
the
can.
assessment view. Yes, I just checked, and they're all up there now, so people can access them. So those of you who are in 8th grade and teaching an Algebra 1 course, you may want to look and see what's available in grade 9.
That's amazing. That is hot off the presses because I looked this morning. So awesome. Thank you so much, Annie.
You're welcome.
When you are logging off of Zoom, you will get a quick survey. Please fill it out. We would love to hear your feedback and reach out anytime. Again, I'm Heather Jenkins. We've got Annie Wallace here from the New Hampshire Department of Education. She's your math lady, all things. So we appreciate you being here today.